Hi, I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and this is PostScript, coming to you from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. PostScript is a series that we do that reflects the kind of underlying notion that there's huge kind of change happening in this planet right now and on this world. And every month we try to bring to Berkeley Springs a speaker from somewhere around the world who exemplifies a particular aspect of this major kind of change, whether it's technology, which we've had in the past, or music, which we have coming up in the future. And today our great guest is Dr. Penny Keeley. Every time we have this, we do a presentation here in Berkeley Springs that's open to the public, and Penny Keeley is a naturopathic doctor who has written 7 different books and done a great deal of research on different aspects of consciousness and energy and how consciousness generates causality. That is to say, how what we think turns into the physical reality that surrounds us. And this is the most essential nature of how things happen on this planet and in this reality. And we're really pleased to have you with us today, Penny. Thanks for being on PostScript.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So how does consciousness produce reality?
Well, you have to understand that consciousness is half of a coin. One side of the coin is energy. The other side of the coin is consciousness. So we start with mind, space. Mind is the awareness property of space, and space is the location aspect of mind. And consciousness is the feeling side of energy, and energy is the motion of consciousness. So if you put that together and you really get what that stands for, what that means, that then tells you that what you're doing with consciousness is moving energy.
Sure.
We haven't developed that very much at this level of being, but the potential is the sky's the
that's
limit.
interesting, because what I'm reading these days is some things about John Keeley, if you're familiar with
yes.
Keeley's work from the late 1800s.
Little bit.
An extraordinary kind of inventor, physicist, scientist, who says that everything is everything comes from an underlying field that vibrates. And so everything is essentially a byproduct of complex vibrations of an underlying kind of source field. And what you're saying is essentially is that consciousness engages or impinges upon that source field in such a way that it generates a complex kind of waveform?
What we did in the lab was to start by measuring plasma.
So let me talk about this.
Okay.
You worked with Dr. William Levengood, who
yes.
is one of the foremost researchers about, in fact, figured out how the whole crop circle phenomena worked.
Right.
And not the phony guys who were doing it. No, but the real things about the energetic kind of change, and did all the cellular measurements and such like this. And in the process, developed this kind of understanding or this theory, this framework for how this works. So,
right, and he started out by discovering an unknown energy, what we thought was an unknown energy, and that research went on for quite a few years, a decade. And then there were something he read, and he said, you know what, this sounds like plasma. So then we did a whole series of tests. And
so now what is plasma? We're not talking about blood plasma here.
No, we're not. No, plasma is sometimes referred to as the fourth state of consciousness, but there's
matter.
Of matter.
Right, okay.
I'm sorry, thanks. So there's plasma can be thought of in 2 ways. One, you've seen those flocks of birds and they fly. Not a single bird is out of step. They don't run into one another. They just fly perfectly in unison.
Right.
Very rhythmic. That's kind of the way you can picture the particles in a plasma.
So a plasma is a large area of kind of space that has small little particles in it? Is that how it works?
That's correct, that work together as one.
I see. So they're connected, they interact, interdependent kind of?
Right. Now a more, we would say maybe technical definition of plasma, a little bit closer to science, would be that a plasma is a house of fields. It's a whole bunch of fields that are interacting. What we discovered was that plasma was conscious, and that plasma responded directly to consciousness.
So is a flame a plasma? Like,
yes. Everything is plasma.
So you've got,
everything.
in kind of historical terms, you have liquid and solid and gas and plasma, and in kind of traditional terms, it's fire and water and
Yes.
air and
earth and metal.
And the fire part, well, the fire part is the plasma part, right?
No, that's not really correct.
Oh, come on.
Okay, no. No, think of it this way. There's plasma, and then there's all the rest.
Okay.
Plasma is the basis of all matter.
Ah.
So if you can learn to manipulate plasma, you can learn to destroy or create matter.
So God is plasma?
Well,
I mean, that's where everything comes from, right?
well, there's a different, let's say it this way. There's this substance, there's this stuff, it's light.
Right.
That light responds to the words or to the sounds g, ah, d. It pushes
That's
that
like God.
light.
You said God.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you put g, ah, d together, what you get is the word God.
I see.
So when you attach a thought to that sound, then you are literally shaping and causing the plasma to move in particular ways. The plasma is then intelligent, and it begins to interact.
So it's all sound.
It's
This
all
is
sound.
about sound.
It's all about sound.
This is about music.
This is about music.
This is all about
Yes.
music.
Yes, it is. And that's, I think, where our languages originally came from. They were experimenting with sound. You know, our history goes back a lot further than what we are taught in school. But they were experimenting with what sounds would move that light, and that's where the language came from. There were power languages. We have lost those.
But what you're saying essentially is that the most fundamental field out of which everything arises that we
right.
see as matter is plasma.
That's right.
Is this the same as the 0-point energy field? Or?
Not quite. The 0-point energy field is the 0-point energy field. When you go into source and you're in the Godhead.
Source? Godhead?
Source.
What is that?
Okay, let's back up a step. Okay.
You mean the source of everything?
The source of everything,
Okay.
right. So can we talk about Kundalini?
Yes,
for a
we can
moment?
talk about anything you'd like to.
Okay, so Kundalini is an event in which an individual enters totally unlimited consciousness. Okay, it's an energy event within the body. And if it doesn't,
That can come up just
it can be
arbitrarily, and sometimes you can kind of work yourself into that space, right?
Right. You can meditate, you can get quiet, you can have a really stressful event,
Yeah.
and suddenly the release from that releases consciousness, and where it's been really focused on this stressful thing, and all of a sudden the stress is gone, consciousness goes poof,
Yeah.
and it expands, and you enter into these super conscious
So how many people,
states.
what percentage of people do you think have had this happen to them?
Not very many.
Not very many.
Yeah.
But you're one of them.
I'm one of them,
Right.
yeah. And so,
And so this is an extraordinary kind of experience where kind of the internal energy that's part of you somehow it kind of explodes and manifests itself. and-
right,
Yeah.
you end up becoming a channel for whatever reason. In my case, it was spontaneous.
Right.
Other people go after that.
Right.
This is what the Buddhists meditate for, and
Yeah.
and the all the meditators in New Age thinking and talk is about. So this Kundalini event happens. It
Right.
takes you back to the source material of yourself. That is light And that light just has one thought and one feeling. And the one thought is, I am. And the feeling is absolute and utter bliss. And that never changes.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because you go back there and it's always the same.
Oh, I see.
I mean, the Kundalini
You have to have
for me
one of
was
these experiences to be able to go back there, right?
right,
Okay.
right. And so I had that. It was a problem for me for like 3 or 4 years, and it's not really a problem anymore, but it still happens now and
Okay.
then. It's spontaneous. So you're back in the source material, okay?
Right.
That's the original unchanging stuff.
Okay.
It's silent, nothing's moving. There's
Right.
just this one thought that doesn't ever change, and this amazing bliss. The bliss is paralyzing. So the real mystery is who makes the first sound or the first move, or what starts this mind. That's what I call mind space. What makes that start moving?
Right.
Because as soon as that starts moving, you have this evolution from mind and space to consciousness and energy.
Right.
And that consciousness and energy is where the plasmas form. So, and then everything else takes shape from there because it's all intelligent.
Right.
All of it.
What do you mean? This plasma is intelligent?
Plasma is intelligent. It
I mean,
knows it exists. It
All
has
of
this.
it, or just some
all
of it, or
all of it.
how do you?
Every stone, every rock, every tree. Remember the old stories? Like the stories of the Europeans coming to indigenous places and saying, these crazy people, they're worshiping trees and they're worshiping water and they're praying to the earth and all this stuff. Those are their gods.
Yeah.
And they put a lot of effort to make people stop doing that. What those indigenous people were really doing was communicating with that intelligence
Right.
in each thing and asking it to do or not do whatever they needed.
Right.
Whatever, So then Elliot Cohen, however you say that, comes along, plant spirit medicine, and he's talking about, these plants will change their chemistry to be the kind of healing agent that you need. If you can't find the plant that would do that, talk to one that doesn't do that, and it will change its chemistry. Give it 20,
Now the McKenna
30.
brothers, Terrence and McKenna.
Yeah. Same thing. Or even Dan Carlson, Sonic Bloom fame. He got a whole package of, I don't know if it was pink or blue flowers. He planted them, and his daughter said, I didn't want those flowers. I wanted those to be pink, and they all came up pink. So
How
plants
nice.
will change their chemistry.
I see.
So water will change its course. Trees, I've seen some things with trees that are pretty amazing.
And the point you're making is that everything is alive.
Everything.
And you can communicate with everything.
Right.
And if you figure out the right way to communicate with them, you can influence, and they will, in the
Respond.
same way that you respond to me in this conversation, that they can respond.
That's
I mean,
right.
this is a larger kind of
That's the bigger
conversation.
context. So all of those people were busy communicating, and the Europeans were saying, what? That's not how you do it.
Right.
So we lost our connection to nature in a very, kind of a protracted sort of a series of attacks that I think we need to go back and pick that up again and really learn to communicate with nature, because it will do amazing things.
Well, that's happening, I think. I mean, in
Yeah,
the
it is.
second segment of this conversation that we're having, I want to talk about the future and where that's all going. But
Right.
what you're starting to see is this marriage, this amalgam of both the
Right.
kind of Eastern and Western and natural and whatever into a new kind of philosophical or a framework, a paradigm, a way to make sense
Right.
out of reality that's coming.
Yeah. So to kind of sum that up, the fact that consciousness directly impacts plasma
Right.
means that consciousness is a tool for creation. It's a tool for healing. It's
Yeah,
a
but
tool
does it
for
just do
inventing.
this when you turn it on? How does this work? I mean,
It
is
works all the time.
all the time. Yeah, right now?
Yeah, right now,
Right
yeah.
now it's going on.
Yeah, and I think we are creating the whole reality,
But we don't know it.
but we don't know it, and we are careless with what we're careless
So
with our minds.
our thoughts translate into the reality and the experiences that we experience, right? They come downstream.
Thought plus feeling. It is
So
the
it's feeling.
feeling that gives the thought its power.
So if I feel good, it's all going to work out all right.
Not necessarily.
Oh,
but
shoot. Well, I mean,
we
what
are
good is
powerful
this?
enough. Right, I know. We want the, what would I call that? The assurances of hard science. And so we've gone into a lot of deep, deep science to find out what can we absolutely count on. And I think that that's a great value of that science. When you get deep enough, however, you come back around to when all else fails, by God, start using your consciousness. So the two together, hard science and consciousness, that's a powerful team.
So in practical terms, how does this work?
Be more specific. How
Well,
does
if you
what
want to change
exactly?
the color of my shirt, what would you do?
I wouldn't care about the color of your shirt. You know,
I knew it.
You have to care.
You're just that kind of person. I
Yeah,
know.
right. You have to care about the whatever it is, and that is
you
what
don't care
gives.
about my shirt.
Not really.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a lovely shirt.
Yeah, right, okay.
Don't let me insult the shirt.
Okay, thanks. Good.
So, but you have to have. So, for instance, you know, this is some years ago. My daughter had a little boy. He was 2, and they're living in Germany, and you know they're in the army, and he got, I don't know if it was meningitis or, you know, something with his spine, serious. So I get this frantic phone call one night, and he was in the hospital. He was in critical condition. His temperature was 106 plus. It was going up. And my daughter was absolutely frantic. And she said, you know, the doctors are saying he's going to have brain damage and blah, blah, blah. And she's just crying and sobbing. And just as cool as a cucumber, I said to her, okay, this is what we have to do. You sit down and you just get quiet and you hold a picture of Craig, his little guy's name was Craig, in your own mind. And you picture this sun, like this little tiny ball of light in his belly button. And you just keep seeing that expand to cover the whole body. In the meantime, I'm going to call the family and ask them to do the same thing. So she's, okay, you know, I'm the mother. So she does what her mother says. So she trusted that implicitly. She sat down, you know, she got her husband to do the same thing. In the meantime, in about 5 minutes' time, I made maybe 10 calls to my family, to aunts and cousins, my mother, and I said, one thing, Craig is in the hospital in Germany. He's got a temperature of 106. I haven't been able to stop it. You know, pray, meditate, ask, do whatever you need to do, and let's all together at the same time, you know, push that energy toward him. So get done making the calls. I run, you know, and sit down, and I'm going to join in this meditative effort. And so I do. And I'm deep in this meditative state, out of the body. And I'm over in Germany, and I'm hanging over this hospital crib, and he's not looking very good. And there's 2 doctors across the crib from me, and in walks this guy that I can only call Jesus. And he walks up, and he's looking directly at me, and he just does this around Craig's head. And then he looked up at me and said, he'll be okay now. And he turned around and left. And I was so shocked, I ended up back in the body, which I'm very proficient at OBE. And I sat there thinking, what was that? That was totally unexpected. And the phone rang. about 5-10 minutes later, and it was my daughter, and she said, "Mom, it worked. The temperature dropped. He's perfectly fine." And I was like, oh, yeah, well, it's supposed to work, but I was still fairly surprised about the turn of events. I realized later that all my aunts were old-time Christians. They were praying to Jesus. So he showed up, and there was a miracle right there. And I said to my daughter, "So can he go home?" And she said, "Well, they said he could, but they're going to keep him overnight for observation, just in case." And there was no damage. There was, he was fine after that. So you have to...
Do you have to be a Christian or something for this to work?
No, It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter whether you're Christian or non-Christian.
Do you have to pray?
You have to visualize and ask for what you want. You have to.
So it really doesn't need any of this.
The religious stuff is
stuff.
irrelevant. I mean, you can put a Jesus name on it, or a Buddha name, or a Mohammed, or whatever you want, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the big thing is that everybody was really passionate at that moment, like, oh!
So I can get a new car out of this?
You probably could. You probably could.
What would I do to get a new car?
You would sit down, you would picture, you'd have to drum up some big emotion.
I could be in the car and feel it.
There you go.
Smell the new car and all that stuff.
Very
right?
good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. See it, feel it, smell it, taste it, touch it, experience it, etc. And you have to have emotion behind it. The energy of motion is your consciousness. That is the power behind consciousness, is emotion. If you don't have any emotion, you can do a nice prayer, and it'll, move 3 plasmas.
It's very small, yeah.
Right, it'll have a small effect. But if you get what we had in that particular instance with Craig, was the whole family just boom,
Yeah,
we need to do this.
I understand. You kind of dominate the space, but
That's
if you
right.
don't have emotion, we only got a couple minutes here, but if we don't have emotion,
Yeah.
is everybody else dominating our space and shaping it, or how does that work if consciousness is producing the physical reality?
Everybody's responsible for their own field. You live in your own world.
All right,
This is a reality system.
all right.
So,
It is. Seems that way. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, I don't think people really grasp what
Well,
that
I understand.
means.
And so what
Yeah.
I'm saying is you just get swept downstream by the kind of things that are happening in are other people or other things or other organizations dominating your space? Is that what
Yes.
happens?
Yes, you have
You have to dominate your own space?
You have to be present to the world that you want to see happening.
What does that mean? Be present to the world that you want to see happening.
That means you have to be present in yourself. So if you're going to let everything else outside you dominate what's happening, then you're going to go along with that. You're not going to have any effect on that. There's stages of development. So one of the first stages is you have to become present to who you are, present to yourself, and then you have to become willing to change what's happening within your world. And for some people, the first willingness to change is health. You have to be willing to do what you have to do to be healthy.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Because
you're
if
gonna
you're
go
not
down.
healthy, then it's affecting everything else.
That's right. And you
But
go
the
down.
idea here is that you drive, you have to change from this passive to an active kind of role. And
That's right. And then you begin, once you have mastered your own reality, know thyself. That's what that means. Then you have to begin to say, okay, I'm going to do something about that. And I'm going to do something about that. And I'm not going to bother with this over here. So you begin to choose where you want to put your...
And you revisit that on a regular basis?
On a regular basis.
And you
Right.
feel it.
And you
feel
feel
it
it.
very strongly, and you kind of
And
build
you
this
become-
immersive kind of...
Yes, you become active in that. You're a perfect example.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to change the world, and I'm going to have an impact, and I'm going to put some input in, and it's a huge reality system. It's huge. But, you can have a huge impact. One person can have a huge impact on a lot of people, and then that goes out from there. So,
And so you're saying, by extension, that people who have a large impact, in fact,
Are passionate.
yes, are passionate. Passionate's a very nice word in
Yes,
this
it is.
context.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and they take action.
Yeah,
And they don't sit on the couch.
that's right. Drink beer and watch TV.
Right. No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
nothing against TV and beer. but
Yeah, well, I don't
All right,
even own a TV.
we'll come back and talk about more of
Okay.
this. All right. Our guest
All right.
today is Dr. Penny Keeley. And we're pleased to have her with us. In the next segment, we want to talk about the future. Penny, among other things, is an accomplished intuitive. Part of this experience, this Kundalini experience that she mentioned, has opened up kind of capabilities and gifts that allow her to kind of anticipate futures in ways most people can't. And so we'll come back and we'll talk about that. This is PostScript, where we look at the future of where the world and where humanity is going, with guests that come to Berkeley Springs here for our Berkeley Springs Transition Talks. And I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute. Thanks for being with us.